Remember when the election broke and all of a sudden this whole elbows up campaign thing happened and it just all felt weird. It all kind of felt very manufactured. It felt fake. It felt hollow. However, it was something that clearly was working among the people and they were tapping into something that seemed semi-real to enough people where they were able to gain traction in their campaign and eventually win a re-election bid against the Conservatives. It felt weird. You weren't alone because I felt it as well. And well, we ended up finding some knowledge today. Blacklock's reporter found out that the Liberal government at the time leveraged the Privy Council office to fund focus groups to the tune of $1.6 million to find out exactly what Canadians are feeling in terms of how they felt about Trump, his proposed tariffs, and what was coming down the pipe. And we're going to be covering that whole story today, which was egregious in nature. And number two, we have a CBC former host with the company organization for 20 years who officially said, I'm done, bye-bye, this organization's a joke. And he made sure to make it very clear how he felt about the organization on his way out, and the rot that is on the inside. We'll be covering that. And then number three, won't be totally covering it as a story, we'll be kind of touching on it, is the fact that Alberta and Ontario, Danielle Smith and Doug Ford are teaming up together to try and get pipelines pushed in this country against the federal government. Welcome to the LA Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. I'm grateful to be back on with you once again. If you get any value from today's show, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. Helps grow the show, helps us grow the brand, and as well helps us get in front of people who are just looking for something different than what the mainstream media offers. Now let's get into our first story, shall we? Privy Council polled on fears. Main themes of the Liberal Party's elbows up re-election campaign were tested in confidential federal focus groups months before the U.S. announced tariffs, documents show. Pollsters hired by the Privy Council found many Canadians were unsettled by Donald Trump and feared mass layoffs from tariffs. You hear it and you're just like, okay, that's what they were doing. But then you gotta think about the second side of it, is it's the Privy Council office that they leveraged to make this happen. Privy Council office, we need to be refreshed on what their duties are, is, well, first off, they run support to the cabinet. Their whole goal is to run bipartisan support to the cabinet and the Prime Minister's office. Their whole goal and what essentially their mandate is to be of support of where they can when it comes to data and gaining insights to help them govern the country better. The PCO works with departments and agencies on their proposals to cabinet called Memoranda to Cabinet, or MCs, challenging departmental submissions to ensure they meet the information needs of cabinet and they are consistent with the government's overall policy direction. Nonpartisan advice to the Prime Minister. The PCO assists the Prime Minister in strategic policy planning, ensures coordination of the government's policy objectives, and manages major issues. For example, the PCO assists the Prime Minister in writing the speech from the throne and works closely with the FIN when it prepares the budget. The PCO provides policy advice to specific areas, including foreign affairs, defense, national security, intergovernmental affairs, and any other policy issues of particular concern to the Prime Minister. The PCO advises the Prime Minister on machinery of government issues, governor and council appointments, and constitutional matters. This is the key part. As head of the public service, the clerk of the Privy Council is responsible to the Prime Minister for the overall performance and effective management of the public service. The clerk advances the government's public service management agenda, provides advice on the appointment of senior public service personnel, serves as the spokesperson for the public service, and prepares an annual report on the state of the public service. The weird part is that's where their role stops. They're not supposed to help in party matters. They're not supposed to help in party issues. They're not supposed to aid in any party goals. It's simply to help them be a better governing party as they deal with the Canadian people. That's it. That's all. However, so when you read what they're supposed to be doing, it's like, that's weird. How did that all happen? Why is that all going the way it's going? And so as the Blacklock's reporter goes into more, focus group participants predicted more border security. The view was expressed that border security would be a top priority for the incoming U.S. administration, said the report. Cabinet subsequently announced new border security measures on January 17th. Participants also predicted more defense spending. Several expected that going forward, the U.S. government would likely strongly encourage the government of Canada to increase its defense spending, said the report. Cabinet subsequently announced new military spending on January 24th. The final version of Canadians' views was given to political aides January 20th. The same day the U.S. announced 25% tariffs would be imposed within weeks. Stand up for Canada, and said then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That is the purview of the Privy Council's office there, they're just trying to give them information of what's happening with people on the ground so they can finesse and figure out what their policies need to be to react and be as best what they can for the Canadian people. But the problem is, that's not where this ended. The Liberal Party of Canada used the data that was collected by the Privy Council office and used it to inform and start and build out their propaganda campaign around elbows up. That's where this steps into the area of no, and using public funds for party objectives is where that line was crossed from my perspective. They leveraged a report, they leveraged focus groups, finding out people are terrified of Donald Trump and what the tariffs are going to mean and people's uncertainty around the economy, and they built a whole campaign around leveraging those fears. Built a whole campaign around targeting those fears and making sure they exposed those vulnerabilities in the Canadian people so that they could win re-election. As I said to start off the show, remember, it felt weird. The whole campaign felt weird. The whole elbows up thing felt hollow. It felt odd. Well, now we know. They ran campaigns not funded by the party donors, not funded by party funds, but no, funded by public funds to run a propaganda campaign against you and I, to manipulate the emotions of the Canadian public in order to vote for them, saying, we're the only ones who could fight Donald J. Trump. And Elbows Up was born. Because then Blacklock's finishes off their report saying, Prime Minister Mark Carney launched his Elbows Up campaign March 23rd on a promise to increase border security, expand the defense budget, and confront tariffs. Trump claims Canada isn't a real country, Carney said at the time. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. This was all based off information they got from their reports and their focus groups. And they tailored their re-election campaign based on what they learned from these focus groups to the tune of $1.6 million of public funds. As I said, these things all feel this whole government, everything we've experienced over the past years felt very manufactured because it has been. It's very sanitized, well, because it is. A lot of things that have happened even since COVID at this point have felt very, very odd. And we know that either our Canadian Armed Forces or the RCMP engaged in propaganda techniques during COVID. That came to the surface. So this is not the first time this has happened. Then we learn of, obviously, during the campaign of Buttongate and how the Liberals have done a great job at various times to plant inflammatory imagery or implant inflammatory devices in order to spark and divide Canadian people. This has been going on for at least really obviously the past 5 years. And so to see them do these focus groups with the Privy Council funds, then take that information and leverage it to then fabricate a propaganda campaign around Elbows Up, well, that's what you can come to expect of this Liberal Party. And we are just here to continue to talk about it and expose it. Kind of like this other individual from the CBC. Travis Dunroj posted this on X today. And he's stepping away and leaving the CBC, but not before he lets people know exactly the reason he's leaving. He wrote 2 posts today. One that was an internal email that was sent to all his colleagues. Then a second one that was posted to people like you and I, and what he's been seeing and what you can expect to see coming from him in the future. This was the message to colleagues. It says, Dear colleagues, after more than 20 years in Canadian television journalism, I've been forced to resign from CBC News. This was not a voluntary decision. It comes after trying to navigate a workplace culture defined by retaliation, exclusion, and psychological harm. A place where asking hard questions about tokenism, masquerading as diversity, problematic political coverage, protocols, and the erosion of editorial independence became a career-ending move. I was once one of CBC's most visible journalists, a senior parliamentary reporter, co-host of Marketplace, and most recently, host of Canada Tonight. Promoted as a symbol of progress until I began questioning the gap between CBC's stated values and its internal reality. When I pushed for honest conversations about systemic issues and editorial imbalance, I was shut out, sidelined, silenced, and ultimately erased. CBC calls itself a champion of inclusion and public trust, but those ideals are too often deployed as branding tools, not lived principles, and Canadians are noticing. What's happening inside this institution is no longer just an internal problem, it's a public one. The erosion of trust in the CBC didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years of dysfunction at the highest levels where a small group of insiders on air and in management wields outsized influence and prioritizes spin over substance. Leadership clings to reputation while failing to confront the real reasons viewership is in freefall. CBC doesn't need more workshops. It needs accountability. It needs reform. It needs courage. To those still inside, silence shouldn't be the price of your paycheck. The only thing that sustains broken systems is fear. And the only way things can change is when people speak. I don't know what's coming next, but I know there will be efforts to discredit me, spin, smears, the usual playbook. But I'm not here to protect comfort. I'm here to speak truth, even if I have to do it from the outside. To those who stood by me, thank you. I'll miss the good people I worked with, many of whom are still trying to do journalism the public deserves under impossible conditions. I leave with clarity and my voice intact. You will hear more from me soon. Travis. I commend this gentleman very much so. It's not easy when your paycheck is on the line, your salary's on the line, to say, you know what, screw it. I'm done. I've been speaking out about this internally and you guys shut me down. I've been talking about the issues that we've been seeing, obviously, and you shut me down. To the point now I'm forced to have to step away and sacrifice my salary in the process. But this is a man of integrity. This is a man of principle, and one that we should look to highlight and praise. Because we on the outside, including our show and many others like it, have been calling the CBC for, well, ever. We've seen the rot from the outside, but they claim, oh, it's all good. No, we believe in journalism. We believe in journalistic integrity. And they then actively go after small creators like myself to make sure we shut up about them and that they can be the only game in town in their corruption. What he said in this was not surprising. What he said in this was not shocking. We've all known about this, but it's nice to see an insider come out and says, no, what you're seeing is correct. We saw what happened during the election. There were some really questionable coverage practices, which I really didn't like. There was a small group of insiders on the air who wield their influence around all the rest of us. And the fact he even called it out there, which I thought was fairly interesting, is that I don't know what's coming next, but I know there will be efforts to discredit me, spin, smears, the usual playbook. Even someone within the organization knows that there is a playbook to go after people who are disruptors. To those who are calling these things out, they will use every mechanism and their power to discredit anyone who pushes against the system. And we're going to watch this happen with Travis. The thing about this, and also so much more, is a lot more is coming to the surface. A lot more is coming out. There is so much rot in our institutions. And you will be pointed out as someone who doesn't care about Canada. You don't like the country. You don't love the country. Then get out. My friends, here's the thing. Sure, we can get out. But however, in the process, we will continue to call out the BS because we love this country. We want to see it become better. We want to see it become stronger. And we want to get the rot out of it in all of our institutions and the victims that rot has claimed. I will be calling all of it out. I don't care what you say. I don't care what ism or ist you throw my way. This will be the conversation until it gets unbearably uncomfortable and you have to face the facts that things aren't the way they say they are. You've been ignoring it for 5 years. You ignored it through 2 elections. My friends, it is ugly out here. It is ugly in the institutions that we grew up to trust so much. And the people calling it out are not the enemy. We are the allies who want to see Canada become better and get back to what it once was. A beacon on the hill for so many. So you can choose to come at me, whatever. But sometime, somewhere, you're going to have to acknowledge the truth. And more of the truth is going to keep coming out. And I'm going to aim to be one of those light sources that beams on the cracks to expose all the cockroaches. But anyways, enjoy your Monday. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.